It is 10 o'clock. If we would, I'd like to bring the Legislative Committee to order, and first up and only up is the only Josh Waller. Josh, the floor is yours.
Right? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, full board commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you today. Click here to our look ahead. So today is day 61 of the General Assembly. A little bit quieter at the Capitol than it was on day 40. So we'll start with it. We'll take a look at the calendar, look a little bit backwards and look forward. There's still some days ahead that are important for what has been a historic legislative session. And I think that's going to be underscored in the next presentation by the treasurer when she goes through the budget. But obviously the infusion of significant investment, a significant percentage of the state's surplus for that fiscal year into transportation is historic. But beyond that, we also had some pretty significant milestones with legislation. And so I want to highlight those. You've heard about them before. One item signed, two that are still pending before the governor's desk. So we'll take a look at the legislation, then we'll do a walkthrough of what are the pending proposed road dedications that are out there, and then do a wrap up on state of play in the federal side. So here's the full calendar. So you see session, all the days, the session marked out. And then under the Georgia Constitution, the governor has 40 calendar days in which to review the legislation, either sign it, veto it. Obviously, by vetoing it, it's not allowing it to become a law, sending it back to the General Assembly, or it can become a law by the governor withholding his signature. So there's that 40-day period. When you calendar that out, that becomes May the 7th. So after May the 7th, we should know the governor's posture on the legislation that's pending before him. So first up is jumping into the legislation. We've talked about a Senate Bill 353. Now this one's already been signed into law. Governor signed it on March the 4th. It was one that had been before General Assembly, got to the governor, and then there were some challenges, so we had to come back and redo it again. But thankfully, it moved quickly during the session, and the governor signed it. But it's just some key things to remember, and some of the cleanup it did in our procurement. It helps, one, make sure that Georgia GDOT nationally continues to be a leader in innovative procurement. So that's a very important component of that bill. It also, with the language, it allowed for better coordination and designation between coroners and medical folks in the field on crashes, will hopefully enable more tools to clear significant wrecks and reduce secondary crashes. So that was another important piece of the bill. And then lastly, something that's on everyone's mind these days, but in a world where we know data and the value of data in helping to improve the transportation system, that you have lock, stock, and barrel protections for data privacy in law for those people using the roadway. So that was great successes in SB 353. The other piece of legislation is pending right now for the governor's House Bill 516. That was sponsored by Representative Derek McCollum. Showed the picture of him getting his the hazing they do for new legislators, or for legislators when they do their first bill. And it carried over from last session, so it had two items important to the department when it started. The first was making sure that our quick response program, which hasn't been updated in terms of the cap on those contracts since 2012, account for inflation. So this ensures the quick response program continues to thrive, move forward, and tackle those intersection and other turn lane projects that are the name of the program, quick response. People can see turned around quickly. So it also made some improvements to our P3 statute, just some clarification again to make sure that when we're doing these procurements, we're doing them in a timely fashion and getting them turned around and getting the projects moving. There were some additional items included. So one was with the anticipation of the World Cup coming to Atlanta in 2026, allowing for the installation on state right-of-way of up to 30 kiosks. You can see a picture of what those kiosks look like in the corner. The permit, they're allowed through July 1st of 2026. It also had a couple of Title 40 traffic ops items dealing with one particular roadway up in North Georgia that there's been concern about heavy trucks and accidents, and it'll help manage that a little bit better, as well as making sure that it's clear the maximum speed limits between an interstate and a non-interstate limited access highway. It also, something we've talked about, and you've seen presentations recently on the locomotive diesel tax and the program tied to that, it just goes into statute and better harmonizes that use of that tax with the freight program that was created in law a couple of years prior. So it's just good to see those two tied together. Then the last piece was something that kind of came out and just hitched a ride onto the bill. last year the General Assembly passed, sort of a national example of an EV charging bill, but one of the challenges for the Department of Agriculture, which was tasked in that bill of developing a permit process for safety and accounting for making sure that the kilowatt hours are accurate. They needed some more time, so it extends that out for another year. Just as an aside, as I know you'll see and have seen presentations on the department's NEVI program, this legislation will have no impact on the rollout of that. It exists sort of on the side, but it won't get in the way of. Next is House Bill 617, which wasn't an agency legislation, but it is important legislation, and GDOT, it certainly is a testament and endorsement of the General Assembly of GDOT's freight planning process, because it codifies the freight plan. And then you'll see it creates the freight plan that we already do today. It ties it into the existing process, creates a 20-year window, and you'll notice the terms that it uses: foundational, catalytic, and innovative, which you've heard a few times. So they're definitely keying in on our process today. It also requires the plan to focus on those areas of ports, inland ports, and then those major industrial centers to make sure that we're looking at those projects to support that freight growth. It then, as Angela will talk about the governor's amended program, it also mirrors the budget program by creating the Georgia Freight 2050 program and statute. And then it requires each year on February the 15th just an updated progress report to the House and Senate Transportation Committees. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Abby Handel to walk through road dedications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the opportunity to provide an update on the 2024 proposed road dedications. As Josh mentioned previously, the May 7th date is the key that we are awaiting for the governor's consideration. So at a minimum, after May 7th, we should have more finalized instructions for the field district offices when it comes to installation of signage. I'd also like to go ahead and take the opportunity to thank the field districts for all their role in the installation and fabrication of the signs. Additionally, the Office of Transportation Data, specifically Todd Hughes, for all their help in the conflict status check and maintaining the dedication database. Now, before I move on, I believe I have a clip of someone with something to say about the House Road Dedication Omnibus. Hey. And that's Keith Jackson saying, "Whoa, Nelly," and I believe Board Member McIntyre may be able to enlighten us a little on it.
Yes, thank you. Keith Jackson was from a small, very small, but very proud community in Carroll County, and Chairman Michelle Morgan reached out to me about her interest in recognizing him, and Representative David Huddleston carried that bill. Keith Jackson grew up in Rooteville, just south of Carrollton, lived on a farm. Then he went in the U.S. Marine Corps, moved out west and on the West Coast, and went to Washington State, I think, educated. Anybody that was a sports fan in the 60s, 70s, and 80s know who Keith Jackson is. It's something I didn't know until recently. They give him credit for naming the Rose Bowl the granddaddy of them all, and Michigan Stadium the big house. So he had a big impact on sports in general. He covered a lot of sports, not just football, including Olympics. But the community of Rooteville very excited about having his sign on the intersection there, and thank you so much for your work to get that done.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And that is the one that all of the house dedications were tagged onto. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So the 2024 proposed dedications are spread among 5 resolutions this year. You should each have a copy of this on your desk. As you can see, it's broken out by congressional district, then legislator, then county, the location, and then the dedication language that will be the exact language on the signs. Here you have the dedications for Districts 6 through 9. And this year's dedications includes 10 interchanges, 16 intersections, 3 roundabouts, and 10 roadway or highway dedications, and 13 bridges. Here on this last slide, we have the dedication proposed for congressional districts 10 through 14. And as I previously mentioned, there are 5 different legislative resolutions. 2 resolutions serve as the omnibus, meaning they have multiple dedications. And then there are 3 resolutions carrying individual dedications. And on a more somber note, we would like to draw the committee's attention to 2 of the individual dedications now. These dedications are honoring the lives and legacies of our late House Rules Chairman Richard Smith and the late Speaker David Ralston.
I'd like to just take a moment to actually talk about 3 of the dedications, but first to Rules Chairman Richard Smith. Richard was very important to Columbus, and Columbus was very important to Richard. He was involved in so many things, and one of the things that was near and dear to his heart was Columbus State University. He served on as a trustee on their board, and was always a true champion. And so, selecting that interchange that all of the students and faculty get off of to go to CSU was very important. And I appreciate working with Representative Carolyn Hughley in getting that all put together to recognize him, because it's a major interchange in our community, and people will be reminded of a great man. I also want to bring your attention to the dedication for the former dean of the legislature, Calvin Smyrie, that was also passed. And Calvin is thrilled about this, didn't expect it. It was a huge surprise. But again, a true servant leader to our community. And the last I just want to talk very briefly about is the interchange to honor Colonel Puckett. Colonel Ralph Puckett was one of the last surviving veterans of the Korean War. He received the Medal of Honor about 4 years ago from the president, and is the only person, a veteran, whose remains will lay in repose at the Capitol in 10 days. So 3 great men, 2 unfortunately no longer with us, 1 still able to be celebrated. So thank you.
I'd like to say a couple of words about Speaker Ralston. Just like Chairman Smith, I believe that they had a special and unique relationship that was long-standing. So it was quite a shock for this session to not have either one of them. But a couple of things about Speaker Ralston. We are dedicating in Fannin County the McKaysville Truck Route and New Bridge, and it is a legacy project of the Speaker, and it will be dedicated to him, along with the rest of it will not be, but it is the widening of Highway 5. And just like David was known for bringing people together, this brings together Georgia and Tennessee, which is kind of unusual, but it's extremely important to this area. One thing I'd like to say about the Speaker is that I really think he had a very unusually open communication style, which was very candid and thoughtful. I think that he and our commissioner enjoyed a very, very good and productive relationship. I'm sure they did not always get along, but I think that our commissioner felt free to speak his mind clearly, as well as the Speaker spoke his mind very clearly. But it resulted in some very thoughtful and well-planned transportation projects throughout the state, not just for David's own part. But I think that really set the tone also for the speaker's staff, and they enjoyed a very good relationship with Josh as well. They worked together very closely and carried out under the direction of the speaker and the commissioner as well. So I think Georgia is much better off for having David Ralston as our speaker before. I think he and Governor Deal will go down as having transportation at the top of their agenda in their legacy. So thank you.
Thank you both. That concludes the review of road dedications, and as I turn this back to Josh, I just will serve as a reminder that on or near May 7th, we will continue to send out more information, and once everything is finalized, we'll send it to the board, the legislators, and the field districts for planning purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Don't go too far. I just want to say one thing, though. As I look at that picture, I think that somewhere, I'd like to think, I know somewhere this February, those two were shaking hands again somewhere out there. Wherever that is, they were there shaking hands again. So as I transition, I do want to take an opportunity to say thank you. First, say thank you to Abby, but also want to get Aaron Zing, if you'd stand up, recognize Aaron Zing, who has been our legislative intern this session, and he was last session. That's kind of a rare chance. He's over at Georgia Tech. He graduates this year. He is a senior public policy student with a concentration in political policy, so pretty fitting internship. He'll graduate in May, and he has been an excellent resource and a great part of the team. Because when you think about, there's committee meetings upon committee meetings, and there's only one person can be in one place at a time. We haven't figured that one. How you make that not work. So having folks in committees, stay on top of committees where we'll have issues impacting us in different committees at the same time. He's been a great resource, and we're very excited to have him and to have had him this session, and look forward to hearing from him in the future, and certainly have every expectation of his success. So thank you very much, Aaron. But wait, there's more. Stand back up, Abby. So we are at I want to recognize Abby beyond all the great work she does for her 5 years of service with the department. So they get the 5 years. Congratulations. And your letter from the commissioner. And if you read the fine print on the certificate, it says the next 25 years are dedicated to GDOT. And your acceptance of the certificate is your agreement. All right, with that, again, and also just say thank you to, as we look backwards in the session before I go to the federal, just thank you to this board, the commissioner, the executive team. It's an all hands on deck affair when you're dealing with the General Assembly, and then when you're being responsive to all the members of the General Assembly, House and Senate, and each one of you get phone calls, our district engineers get phone calls, and so it is definitely a team effort, and a lot of gratitude goes all the way around our subject matter offices from OTD producing those conflict letters. So every one of those road dedications, plus some that didn't make it, there was a letter affirming whether there was a conflict or not. And every one of those letters went through Abby. Every one of those was analyzed by OTD. When those become law, they will go into a system put in by OTD that'll be there forever. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. Every bill that impacts us was analyzed by a subject matter office. And then all the budget work that Angela will talk about in those teams. So just thank you to all of those folks. I want to take that, when we see the teamwork and gratitude headline there, just to say thank you to everybody. So jumping into the federal update, you should have in front of you, obviously the president signed the fiscal year 24 minibus that included transportation. Included in that was a list of congressional directed spending projects, earmarks is what they used to be called. Those are the ones that were in the bill. Or connected to the bill. We are still waiting for Federal Highway Administration to provide guidance on how those funds, on the mechanics of drawing upon those funds, but just something for your awareness, even though those funds will flow through GDOT, they are mostly local projects. So we will be working closely, as we've done in previous years, with project agreements to get those funds down to the locals. So just want to make sure you had that. The federal fiscal year 25 budget process is kicking up now, so you may get questions from local governments about them trying to get in with their congressman or member of Congress or senator. If they need a letter or something, just direct them our way to the commissioner and I, and we'll help get them squared away based off the process. So with that, that is the extent of the federal update and concludes my presentation.
Josh, thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee or the board? Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Josh did a lot of thanks, but I want to personally thank him for his efforts. When you're at the Capitol and when you hear from members of the House and Senate and, you know, elected officials, the words that describe Josh are respect it and appreciate it. And for many of you that have served and all of you have been engaged in the legislative process, those are two very important words. So I certainly want to thank him for all his hard work and leadership and working with everybody. And often, you may not know this, others call on him before non-transportation stuff. So he gets all kind of requests and has been very helpful. And on some of these things too, some of the hitchhikers, as we call it, that added on to bills, making sure that they were germane and also in a good place. And so I just want to thank him for his efforts. Since he was thanking everybody, he certainly deserves it as well. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those comments. Anybody else got any questions or comments? Josh, let me just echo what the Commissioner said. Thank you very much for a great job. With that, we stand adjourned.
Hey, I will call the Finance Committee to order. Ms. Whitworth.
Good morning, everyone. I am here to present the final FY25 budget numbers, but first off, I'd like to start off by thanking all of you in this room, thanking the governor, the House, and the Senate for a spectacular amended fiscal year 24 budget. As you can see here, almost $1.5 billion went into our budget. We had the additional funding that was put into airport aid, local roads admin, that $250 million. As of this morning, $47.5 million has been distributed as of today before we walked in. So almost 20% of that has gone out the door. So that's spectacular. As you can see, $500,000's gone into the new freight program that was created to help enhance economic development and efficiency and safety and logistics throughout the state. And then, close to $650 million going into capital construction and in capital maintenance to advance projects throughout the state. So now we'll dive into the FY25 final numbers. As you can see here, there was an additional $73.4 million brought into the budget in excise. You can see in the transportation trust funds and the transit trust funds, for some of the new board members here, those dollars that are brought in are actually adjusted based on actual collections from FY23. So those numbers are adjusted to reflect the actual collections that were brought in there. In the transportation trust fund, 10% of that can go towards transit, and the remainder goes toward roads, bridges, and debt service. And then in the transit trust fund, that is consisted of the 50-cent Uber taxi fee that's tacked on, and that's dedicated to transit. And then you see in the state general funds, there's roughly $5.2 million brought in, and that's utilized in airport aid, ports, waterways, and rails. Now we're going to talk about how these funds are really allotted in the budget. As you can see here in the bar chart, almost 50% of the overall budget is dedicated to capital projects, which consist of capital construction, capital maintenance, and the local road admin. The next biggest pot of money goes to routine maintenance, which is roughly 21% of the overall budget, goes into routine maintenance. Next after that is general operations that consist of the admin program, data collections, planning, program delivery, traffic management. LMIG consists of 10% of excise, but it makes up roughly 9% of the overall budget. And then you see reflected here what is the GEO bond debt service. Intermodal consists of airport aid, transit, and rail. That makes up 3%. And then the remaining two programs, payments to CERTA and payments to the ATL, is roughly like 1%. All right. Also, I want to thank the governor, the House, and the Senate before I roll in to do a deeper dive into the programs for the passage of the 4% COLA for state employees. I want to thank them for that. Also, they approved an additional $3,000 for our certified peace officers that we have in the department. We have 4 of those, if you didn't know that. So I wanted to dive into this, but I also wanted to start off by thanking them for that, which means a lot for our employees. You can see here there's an additional $5.7 million of what that is truing up the GO bond debt service, reflecting that in our budget. In capital construction, there was an additional $8.1 million. Those funds will be utilized to offset some increased project costs that'll go towards that. The next biggest add in our budget is in capital maintenance, that $35 million that comes from the excise. That will help with leverage federal funds and tackle some of those much needed increased project costs that we're seeing. Next, in data collection, you'll see a lot of the items I'm fixing to talk about spread and all the programs that have people in them. So in data collections, there was a portion of that went toward the 4% COLA for state employees. There was also a small adjustment for the Department of Administrative Services insurance adjustment, and then there was an adjustment for some project billing. Next, as you can see, is the departmental admin budget, which consists of $6.9 million, roughly almost $7 million. $3.7 million of that is used to annualize the items that were in the amended budget, such as the increased IT costs that we had. There's a COLA adjustment that's in there. There's also some increased telecommunication and infrastructure rate increases for the Georgia Technology Authority. The Department of Administrative Services, their insurance adjustment, and then the additional $3,000 that those post-certified officers are receiving is in there as well. All right. On the next slide, you can see here there's $7.3 million being added to LMIG. What that does is that's truing up the LMIG formula to be 10% of excise. This is an all-time high for LMIG. Next, you can see in the planning budget, there is an additional $2 million. There was a COLA adjustment for the employees as well as the DOAS insurance adjustment. But there was a $2 million add that comes from the payments to the ATL. It's being transferred out of there into planning to help with the increased funds for planning for the MPOs. So that's what the additional $2 million will be utilized for. In ports and waterways, the $10,000 just purely reflects the COLA adjustment that is in the program. In program delivery, the $11.8 million add, that annualizes the $4 million adjustment that was in the amended budget to help with increased operational costs and recruitment and retention efforts in that program. There was also the COLA adjustment from the governor's pay, and the House and the Senate approved it, pay adjustment, the DOAS insurance adjustment, and then finally some project billing adjustments in that program. Next is the rail program, which is the $4.7 million add. That reflects the COLA adjustment, insurance adjustment, annualizes roughly almost a little bit under $1.23 million for the amended and the recommendations that we had for operational costs and the state safety oversight program, annualizing those costs. And then it also reflects the actual locomotive sales tax that was collected in fiscal year 23 is brought into the budget there, which consists of roughly $3.4 million. All right. On this next slide here is routine maintenance, has the $35 million that I talked about that was the biggest had previously. That was strictly to help with the material and contracting costs in the program. In traffic management, what that does, it helps with the COLA adjustment, the DOAS insurance adjustment. It helps recruit hero operators. It also helps with the increased cost for 811. That is a location service that we perform. So anyone digging for underground utilities, you call 811. They locate the underground utilities, as well as it helps with safety projects. Next, in the transit program, you can see here, There's $2.6 million that will be utilized for the transit match and helps administer urban and rural FTA funds. The $8.8 million is a formula distribution, which is dedicated for transit projects throughout the state. And then, as you can see here, there is a $500,000 ad that was put into the conference committee version for Chatham County for a microtransit bus to help with a grant that they have received. Next, you have payments to the ATL. There was a $3.9 million reduction. This consisted of that $2 million that was redirected going into planning to help with the MPOs for that. And then they also redirected roughly $2 million to go down into the payments to CERTA program that you'll see me talk about next for the GTIB, Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. And then finally, there was a COLA adjustment for the employees in that program. Lastly on this slide is its payments to CERTA. You'll see the $17.3 million reduction there. What that consists of is our guaranteed revenue bond debt services rolling off the books, which is roughly $19.7 million. You have their small COLA adjustment, as well as the $2.4 million ad for the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank for GTIB. I just want to close out and thank all of you on the board for all your support during this legislative session and the commissioner. I want to thank George Christensen and Sarah McDougall and Kirkley Renwick for all their long hours and dedicated service putting the budget together. I want to thank all the offices for their speedy turnaround when we get asked questions, especially intermodal, because we have hounded them, asking them questions also, which is typical for them. If they're out there listening, I hope they are. I want to thank Abby Day. I want to thank Julia Johnson, and I want to thank Martha Grace Dixon. They're with the House Budget Office, Senate Budget Office, and OPB. They were our analysts. They were an absolute pleasure to work with this session. It's hard to believe that it's almost May and that we are about to get ready to start budget days for 26 in-house. So we will be starting budget days in June for that, and then I'll be back here in August to present it to you guys for approval. But I will say this, we've had a fabulous amended 24 and 25 session, and we have been extremely blessed. I will take any questions that you have.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I will add to what you said about the governor and the legislature and the $1.5 billion, especially the local road admin money, is huge for our communities.
Yes.
I think that's even bigger than the annual LMEG, and comes with no matching.
Yes. And it comes with no matching, which is a benefit for them.
The communities are very appreciative of what they did.
Yeah. 20% of that has already gone out the door. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Are you going to be keeping track, I know you are, of what, I don't know how to ask this because I'm not sure it can be done, but, we got this additional money. Will you be able to track what projects that additional money went to?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Can we get that information? Because for us, in our district representatives, we want to be able to say thank you over and over again for that additional money by project.
Yes. We're diligently working right now with the planning office, internally with the commissioner, trying to come up with that project list, and I'm sure that will be rolled out here in the near future. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Nothing else, we stand adjourned.
I'd like to call the Intermodal Committee to order at this time and invite Clement Solomon to the podium to give us an advanced air mobility study update.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board, and Commissioner. This morning, I would like to share with you an overview of the advanced air mobility study that the department undertook this past year. Let me start with some background on advanced air mobility, or called AAM, which is emerging as an innovative mobility solution in the aviation industry. Colloquially, you could call that flying cars coming your way. What it entails is flying at low altitudes, typically 1,500 to 4,500 feet range, covering distances anywhere from 50 to 250 miles. It encompasses use cases for passenger and cargo operations in urban, rural, and other suburban settings. Currently, the FAA with NASA are developing AAM regulations and appropriate guidelines. So what is a eVTOL? It is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that is electrically powered. Other fuel types such as hydrogen and hybrid options are currently being developed as well. eVTOL has a distributed electric propulsion system that utilizes electrically driven motors and propulsors, which enable them to take off and land vertically. As a result, electric engines can be placed and sized with greater flexibility and provide improved performance over traditional aircraft. Currently, eVTOL OEMs are working with the FAA to certify their aircraft for production and operation. eVTOL aircraft have potential to become an essential tool for public service agencies in applications such as firefighting, public safety, search and rescue, disaster relief, and law enforcement. In addition, they can also eliminate transportation deserts, increase the usefulness of our general aviation airports, and decrease emissions. So why study AAM, and why did we start this last year? It is predicted that the first aircraft is scheduled to be certified late 2024, early 2025. We have also other states that are engaged in AAM planning activities. States are beginning to invest in electric aircraft infrastructure, much like the automotive side. Significant investments are being made as this industry continues to mature as well. From a Georgia perspective, we already have Archer with a manufacturing facility in Covington. They aim to have over 600 aircraft annually. Beta, another OEM, is installing chargers across the state. We have a couple already installed, one in Augusta and another one in Valdosta, and we're looking at some other locations across the state. Georgia Tech continues to conduct research and development on AAM. And last month, SkyDrive, an eVTOL manufacturer, announced a commitment from Augusta-based Bravo Air to purchase 5 aircraft to transport passengers around the city. So let me get into the AAM study a little bit. We had 4 tasks. The first task was to do an assessment of AAM activities and potential in Georgia, conduct an inventory and assessment of the aviation infrastructure, develop a community guidebook, and look at a statewide AAM action plan. We did this by taking an inclusive big tent approach and convened an AAM working group that provided valuable input for the study through numerous exercises such as SWOT analysis, gap analysis. We looked at CONOPS for use cases in Georgia, and the participants included airports, including ATL, government and planning entities, multiple FAA divisions were involved as well, education and professional organizations, utility companies, eVTOL OEMs, Delta, UPS, and even an aviation law firm. So let me just go through the tasks really quick. The first task, as part of the first task, we conducted a nationwide overview of assessing what other states are undertaking about AAM. assess best practices for landing areas and other FAA guidance, focused on advancing AAM industry on 3 key sectors. So we looked at design and testing, aircraft manufacturing, and passenger and cargo services. And lastly, we also looked at economic benefits, job creation, workforce development, and how to deploy AAM supporting existing infrastructure. Task 2 was an inventory and assessment of heliports and airports in Georgia. We wanted to take a look at all the heliports and the airports in the state and compare the compatibility of the application of AAM in these respective areas. As far as heliports go, our key finding was that there are only 9 heliports across the state that can be used for vertiports. And let me just mention that the piece in this case, vertiport is the landing area for the AAM aircraft. Almost all of our airports are compatible and have significant capacity to support AAM. And with regard to the airport charging, the cost to install a charger is anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000. We also thought it was important to develop a community guidebook. The guidebook was developed to serve as a tool and a guide to educate and inform local governments, MPOs, and other agencies that are contemplating and interested in embarking on the AAM journey. The best practices for these local governments in the guidebook include everything from appointing AAM's lead staff member to coordinating with stakeholders, reviewing local ordinances and federal regulations, to creating community-first AAM policies. Lastly, Task 4, we completed the inventory and the assessment of our capabilities. We also wanted to look at where are we now and where do we go? So the blueprint charted an AAM map for Georgia through 4 waypoints that include engaging with stakeholders, assisting local governments, supporting AAM workforce development, and expanding outreach activities. A holistic set of actions will guide our next steps as we prepare for eVTOLs entering the commercial space between 2026 and 2030. So where do we go from here? We looked at 3 phases as part of this action plan. The phase 1 would be ongoing activities that we have been doing this past year, primarily to continue hosting the working group and engage with them, and also serve as a convener and a point of contact for those interested in AAM in the state. Phase 2 would be from looking at 2024 and 2025. We would be looking at developing additional stakeholder engagement tools, distribute a community guidebook, and engage in other outreach activities. And phase 3, which will be 25 and beyond, which is sort of hard to predict at this point because of the rapidly changing industry. We would like to engage with post-secondary aviation electric infrastructure programs for AAM opportunities and continue to further AAM in Georgia. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So have we written in one of those things?
I've seen one fly, not yet.
Are you ready? I got it.
Mr. Lewis?
Kind of like what you're saying. Maybe you mentioned your study and I missed it, but anywhere in the studies, did this make a strong suggestion that this could be like a taxi service?
It is. I think the concept right now is Air Uber, an Excel Air Uber. And the capacity for some of these aircraft is anywhere from 4 to 6, so it kind of fits that Excel Air Uber.
So to that end, if it is an Air Uber, what would the range be? 50 miles, 100 miles, 1 mile?
150 to 250 is the current configuration.
Is there any,
That was my question.
is there any future use for freight on it? I mean, right, from what you've said here, it doesn't appear to carry a lot of weight, but is that something that we're looking at in the future of maybe enabling it for freight?
Yes. The top process right now is low volume, high value, so low weight, and example would be the chips issues that we had when we had the supply chain discussion.
Right.
So these could do short hops,
Right.
medical equipment, organ transport when you need it overnight or you want it done fast. It might be done through stops, but it can move very quickly.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to work on that. Madam Chair?
Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Oh, okay.
I want to go back, and Clement mentioned this, but Archer Aviation they're actively building their manufacturing facility in Covington, Georgia right now, right adjacent to the airport. In fact, Clement's team worked with them, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the airport to what's called through the fence. So they're a manufacturing facility. They're basically able to roll out their AAM and take off and land at the airport. And so that's pretty amazing. That's not like, this seems futuristic, but as Clement said, there's been activity already in Georgia with these type of AAMs. And I always, as I talk about that, often I ask people by show of hands, who's ready to ride or fly? So I'm asking y'all, who's ready to fly? Dana, I think, ready. No. Okay.
Funeral home there to handle any AAM passengers. Can you go back to one of those pictures though of the AAM though? I want to take a picture of it.
I see a corporate sponsorship in your future, Dana.
Absolutely.
I think also one of the important bullets in here was that they're quiet. So for those communities that are thinking about this, that is really critical, because in Columbus, our airport creates a lot of noise. This would be a nice addition that wouldn't exacerbate that part of the problem.
And this is the picture of the Archer, which would be produced here in Georgia, and they're already producing them, but the coming to Georgia is pretty amazing.
So are we planning to have a tour of that facility at some point in the near future?
We can arrange.
Sounds like a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think I'm serious about that. The other part I was serious about too.
It'll come with a free ride.
Right. Any other questions? Clement, thank you so much for that update. We will look to future updates as well as a tour in the near future.
Sure thing. Thank you.
It's in Covington, I think he said. If no other questions before this committee, we stand adjourned.
I'd like to call the committee of the whole to order. This morning, we're going to hear a report from the Stitch update, and I would like to ask Board Member Ms. Key if she would introduce.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell, and good morning, fellow board members and our guest. Mr. Robinson, your timing is so incredible. You can just come right up to the podium. I'm just telling you, it was just incredible how you walked through. But this is how he does it. He's godly-like in this region, that he shows up exactly when he is needed. And he really needs no introduction. It's Mr. A.J. Robinson, who's the CEO of the Central Atlanta Progress, Atlanta Downtown Improvement. He is a phenomenal leader and works tirelessly in this community. Today, he's going to share with us an update on a project that is transformative, that is incredible, that's going to connect downtown Atlanta and midtown Atlanta. And Central Atlanta Progress has been spearheading this effort. They recently received some incremental funding to support that initiative, and we saw on the earmarks that they received some dollars. But Mr. Robinson, at the helm of CAP, has done a phenomenal job in revitalizing and energizing downtown and bringing jobs, housing, resources to the whole area. And so today he's going to give us an update on the work that they've done. Mr. Robinson, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Is this meeting taped? Because I really need a tape of that introduction. I don't usually usually people are throwing things at me. But good morning, and Stacy, thank you for that, and thank you for having us, Russell. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just wanted to give a little bit of overview about who we are, so you understand who we are and our relationship also with GDOT over the years. And then I'm going to call on my colleague Jack Seeby to help me on to give you an update about the stitch. Is it just this button here, the one on? Here we go. So we're going to talk a little bit, just very briefly, about who we are, about the stitch, and a project update. So you can think we have two organizations. Those of you who are familiar with community improvement districts, we are the ADID. There's about 20 community improvement districts around the metro Atlanta region and then spread around the state. We've been in existence since right before the Olympics, and we were formed really to show hospitality during the Olympics. And you can see if you are technically in our district, and so here at GDOT, we run the ambassador force. We have a clean team, and about 20 years ago, we got into the capital projects, which builds our relationship with GDOT, and we also now are in the social impact business. We have an outreach team to folks on the street. The other organization, Central Atlanta Progress, has been around over 80 years. And it was formed back in the 40s, and we represent all business interests in downtown Atlanta, not just the property owners downtown. And we're involved in advocacy, planning, economic development, placemaking, sustainability, and marketing of our downtown assets. Together, just think of these two organizations as the downtown business community, but with business interests from around the region that do business downtown, and it's not just the property owners. And the improvement district is the entity that actually has money to spend in the area. Think of community improvement districts as your friendly neighborhood association, but with self-taxing power. So we raise about $8-9 million a year, and then we spend it on our ambassador force and on seeding capital projects in the neighborhood. So we've been here before, and I wanted to, we've partnered with GDOT on a lot of small projects, but probably two of the most interesting ones in the last couple of decades. I just wanted to refresh your memory. I see some familiar faces around here, and you can see on the left we are celebrating the naming or the putting a big sign about where is Peachtree Street right in downtown Atlanta. We also, there was at the same time the big arches in Midtown were done, and to name Peachtree, we had all those cars that come down the connector, 300,000 or 400,000, and they're always looking for Peachtree Street. So we had a great project. We also did some beautification on top of the street, and I just wanted to show that picture in the upper left corner. I was showing to Russell what the stitch plan. So this was back in 2015-16, and we were working at the stitch at the same time. And the other project on the right was another big project, really that helped create the whole major tourist attraction in downtown, and that was the aquarium. The aquarium was announced in 2002. And we really didn't have a way to get to the back door of the aquarium and the parking deck. And our organization did, I believe, the preliminary engineering and design work, and GDOT built the road, which is now Ivan Allen Boulevard, which connected a bunch of disjointed streets down from Peachtree all the way over to Northside Drive. And we're very proud of that project, and that really unlocked the potential of the aquarium. And just finally, people always want to know, what is downtown Atlanta? And I know you come here from different parts of the state, but this is our definition. Other people have, if you live north of here, everything in Atlanta is downtown Atlanta. But we're really bounded on North Avenue. See, this is Central Atlanta Progress, North Avenue on the north, Boulevard on the east, I-20, and then Northside Drive. The red line you see there is really improvement district. We can only tax buildings that pay property taxes, so we don't tax residential under state law, and we don't tax nonprofits, which we have a lot of in downtown Atlanta, a lot of churches, a lot of state government buildings, a lot of city, a lot of county, federal governments. They don't pay into our district, so we have to just collect from commercial property owners. Okay, so just a little bit of quick history about the Stitch. You know that the federal highway came through in the 50s in a big way, and it's a fantastic economic engine for not only Atlanta but the whole country. But it did have some negative effects on our cities, a lot of cities across America. And one of those areas is where our Stitch is planned for, and that's as you come down just over here and around the curve and go under Peachtree, around that curve, and then towards the Grady curve. There were a number of communities that were really affected, Buttermilk Bottoms and around Butler Street. And we have, in downtown, is really surrounded by the highway, and we've always been trying to figure out how do we reconnect these communities in a physical way, a psychological way, because the highway has really created a gap. And it's, if you've ever walked around downtown, when you get near the highway, it's incredibly noisy and incredibly hot in the summertime. So it's not really conducive. It's not really livable. And since the 50s, downtown, midtown, Buckhead, everything around here is reinventing themselves into livable neighborhoods. And this is really what the Stitch is all about. We started literally over 20 years ago trying to think how we could do this. We've done some work over when you get over near Auburn Avenue and Edgewood underneath the highway with murals and lighting. And in this case, we always felt like as you come around this corner, and you'll see when Jack gets his presentation, there are 3 gaps caused by the streets, by the highway, but fairly manageable sizes. And between West Peachtree and Peachtree and Cortland and Piedmont, if you know where Georgia Power is, that's the edge of the Stitch. And we've been working on different feasibilities, design work, trying to push the idea. I showed you the picture of Russell in 2015-16. We've been talking to GDOT for a long time. And finally, about 3 or 4 years ago, we began to get the attention of some federal dollars, some real feasibility work that allowed us to advance it to what you see here. This is really the location we've picked. You can see how visible this particular part of the city really is. It's close to everything. It's right here in the middle. And our vision really is to recreate the middle of the city of Atlanta along a 14-acre park, which we'll show you in just a moment. My last 2 slides shows you this is looking literally from almost a southeast way, if you're kind of looking from this way down that way. And it showed, this is William Street interchange there and right at the very bottom. And you can see the bubbles there talking about, we got no green space, very little residential. You can see how it divides the 2 sides of the community. Very car-centric. I think it's 300,000 or 400,000 cars, and a lot of parking. And so if you go to the next slide, this is kind of what we envision with the green space in the middle. You're going to hear, again, it's in 3 phases. You'll hear about that in a moment. But this is what we're trying to do. We're literally trying to recreate the center of the city of Atlanta in a way that makes it more livable and yet allows the highway to exist and allows people to get in and out of Atlanta in a significant way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jack Seeby. Jack, I'll let you go and talk about this slide.
Great, thank you. Thank you, AJ, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for having us again. My name is Jack Seeby. I'm the manager of the Stitch project. I work with Atlanta Downtown Improvement District, and as AJ mentioned, this is a very collaborative effort. I really serve in a lot of ways as an extension of, City of Atlanta staff, working with them to help deliver this project. So AJ teed me up for this slide, and the Stitch is going to bring all these great things to the City of Atlanta, into the region, and this slide is from a few years ago. We're actually working to update these benefits right now, but the 3/4 of the $750 million estimated to build all phases of the Stitch will really deliver almost 3 times plus in benefit return on investment. So the expected private investment resulting from the Stitch is an estimated $2 to $3 billion overall. What I'm primarily going to talk to you is a little bit about where we are. So AJ mentioned this great grant award we were recently awarded through the US DOT Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods program, which is a new, they call it a pilot program, and it was a kind of one-time shot at this discretionary funding. And we were recently awarded around $158 million from the federal government to implement phase 1. So this diagram here shows all the phases of the Stitch. In preparing for this grant application, we worked with City of Atlanta, with GDOT, with ARC, to really understand how to potentially deliver a project of this magnitude. And breaking it into those phases, those capping segments between bridges, as AJ mentioned, was the strategy we all came to, with phase 1 being the priority. One, because it's got the least amount of potential impacts, in construction, and 2, it's right there on Peachtree Street. It's going to make a great splash, from the get-go. Also included with phase 1 are all the streets that you see there. So things like streetscape improvements, improvements to the sidewalks, really improvements to make it easier to walk around, access Midtown, downtown, and east and west segments of the Beltline more easily than it is today. So the entity that will end up running the Stitch will be very similar to the Atlanta Beltline entity. We are in conversations with city leaders and in refining that organizational and governance strategy. But the Stitch will be run, will not be under the Parks Department. It will be its own entity with its own resources for operations and maintenance, for programming, much like the Atlanta Beltline is run. So this is just a zoom in of that phase 1 and what the expected area of capping is, and the total area of park that is estimated to create around 4 to 5 acres. So this component plus the streets that were shown on the previous slide, and I have another slide on that, it equates to around $200 million to implement all of that, and that includes planning, design, engineering, and construction. And so we have raised that with this new grant funding to move forward with phase 1. And this is just a zoom out showing the complete extent of those different streets covered in phase 1. So Obviously, a project of this magnitude and complexity requires a lot of different partnerships, and we think GDOT and y'all for your partnership. Clearly, we're working closely with City of Atlanta, but ARC and MARTA are also very closely involved with this project as well, both in terms of raising funding. ARC has been instrumental in that, and setting us up as a priority project for the region. And then MARTA owns the Civic Center MARTA station, which is the MARTA station that crosses over the downtown connector. And so they're key partners in implementing the stitch as well because of that. Generally, this slide we're still discussing the details of this slide, but generally the framework is City of Atlanta will own the infrastructure in the park. It will be an air rights easement from GDOT, and so ultimately City of Atlanta will be responsible for operations and maintenance of the stitch, and we are programming in through funding mechanisms being set up right now, dedicated operations and maintenance funding for the stitch, and it will likely be run by an expert team that we contract with to run things like safety systems, bridge inspections, etc. That's how other cities who have done this, like Dallas, have organized this. The Clyde Warren Park in Dallas is a very similar example of what we're trying to do here, where the city owns the structure and the park and delivered the structure in the park, and the state owns the roadway underneath. And so, it's been done before in a lot of different places like Dallas very successfully, and we're trying to bring those same sorts of benefits to Atlanta via the stitch. The next few slides just give a summary of our funding. So, like we mentioned, Phase 1 construction is completely funded. Phases 2 and 3, however, we have now started trying to raise funding for those phases, and those will be delivered subsequent to Phase 1. So Phase 1 is really kind of our pilot for leading us down and informing design and construction for Phase 2 and Phase 3. And our estimate for when all phases could be delivered, with this grant we won, we have an obligation deadline of September 30th, 2026, and we expect to be in our construction phase by then. That probably means shovels in the ground by 2027, with anticipated construction of Phase 1 by 2030. And then perspective on funding, subsequent phases, we think if they fall in lockstep after Phase 1 could be delivered by 2036. So that's all we have for you today. I appreciate your time again, and please let us know if you have any questions or thoughts.
AJ and Jack, thanks so much for such an informative update that you have given us today. I think that's very valuable to us as well as the citizens throughout this area. Are there any questions or comments? I see Board Member Lemon.
Can you go back to the picture that showed the concept for Phase 1? Back.
This one?
Photo is a picture.
Oh, picture.
Not a chart.
Oh, the concept. I'm sorry, I thought you said the concept.
One more, back. So I guess, maybe we'll stop here. So I guess what you're saying you're going to be doing is putting a park over the interstate?
That's correct. It will be, the interstate there is around 30 feet below street level, and so we would literally be creating a new bridge in between Cortlandt Street Bridge and Peachtree Street Bridge, and on top of that bridge will be a waterproof membrane, and then engineered soil, and landscaping, trees, public park space on top.
And you said this has been done other places?
Yeah. So Dallas was the one example. If you Google Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, that's a very good example of a project like this. Cities all across the country, I think there are examples like Pittsburgh has one. Philadelphia is currently, they have a few and they're building more right now. I think Seattle has 7 projects like this throughout their region. So it has been done in a lot of different places.
We've actually done it here. We just hadn't built a park. If you know Georgia 400, which is State Road, Atlanta Financial Center sits on top of the bridge. But we're not going to build on anything but green space on top of this bridge.
I have a question.
Mr. Golden?
Yeah, I don't really have a question. I just have a request. I'd like a hard copy of your report if that's possible.
Too, yeah.
You answered my second question, was what other cities have done this, but you've already answered that. But I'd like information on that as well. Sure. But I'd love a hard copy, particularly the history that got us to this point.
Oh, okay.
So believe it or not, I might actually read it. But no, thank you for your report. It's fascinating.
Will you share this version?
Yeah, sure.
I have the version. We'll give it to Kristen so Kristen can make copies for you.
Great, thank you.
Our intention is, we're just getting started. We'll be back here and between now and 26 and beyond. I'm sure Russ will have us back and we'll be briefing you about this. We're building on your air rights, so I think it's important to keep you invested. I do want to mention one thing that maybe we went through that, the significance of getting $157 million from the U.S. Department of Transportation should not go unnoticed.
No.
This is a policy that's been, this bucket of money was created in that infrastructure bill and that was passed a couple years ago and money's been allocated across the thing. And thanks to Russell's help and all the help of folks here, we won this award over a lot of other places across America. Mm-hmm. And I'm not aware, I believe this is the largest grant of any type from USDOT in the city of Atlanta. Obviously, the airport, the ports, and other things in one swoop like this. There's other projects have gotten smaller awards, but in one big swoop like this, we're not aware of anything that is big in our history, really. So I just wanted to make sure you all understood that, yes.
Mr. Golden, did you have another comment?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Bowen?
I'd like to make a comment or have a question. Has anybody looked at the future impact it might have on the present 85 and 75 connector down there, how that would work? Because, at some point in time, something has to be looked at.
Mr. Bowen, believe me, we have those conversations and all those things will be contemplated as this goes forward. But as Jack said, though, at this part of the connector, it is really a cavern. It's below grade, below street grade significantly, very similar to what they talked about in Dallas with Clyde Warren Park. It's very similar. It's a very similar comparison because the freeway there was below grade as well, and they're simply connecting one side to the other. But in this area, there is no way to really widen the connector. And the other constraint is the Civic Center, is that is the constraining point of width. So every solution we'd look at would be something different than widening the connector.
Mr. McIntyre?
So who do we envision using this park?
Georgia State students.
Yeah. Do you want to go?
Well, I'll take a shot at it. You go outside and look to the north here. 15,000 new housing units have been built in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. If you go south, you've got at least 5,000 to 6,000 units of housing just for Georgia State students. All of the housing inventory, or Midtown, is pretty much built out. There's not a lot of sites except over here where the varsity site, y'all know where the varsity site is. There's not a lot of land. In South, we have a lot of land and a lot of great infrastructure, MARS systems, and capacity, empty parking lots. and the city needs more housing. And part of why we won the grant was a promise to try to build at least part of this housing as affordable. So I get back to the original premise. We're really trying to make the central business district more livable and get our share of housing. But because of the location of this green space, Atlanta is thirsting for green space. If you follow the last 10 years, the development of the Beltline, the old Fourth Ward Park, there's a park, new West Side Park, there's a park up on, in the upper Midtown, a new park. So people are thirsting to live near parks, and we believe this space, because it's an unbelievable location, if you think about the center of the city, that a lot of folks will find the green space.
Ms. Williams? So if you go back, another one where it shows the 3 phases.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in between those 3 phases, like was just shown on phase 1, it appears that there's going to be major roads sort of blocking it from being an actual contiguous park, correct?
Right.
So, excuse me, back to the question about users, will there be parking to accommodate people who need to travel to, because it's not going to be a walkable park, right? Unless there's a pedestrian bridge that actually connects these 3 versions.
Sure. So right now we're in our master planning phase, so refining what it is exactly that's going to be going in these different segments of the stitch, what the programming is, what the kind of big picture design moves are, as well as we're looking at, how not only the immediate stitch works, but how the area works and functions as a district and really as a connection between Midtown and downtown. And so, we're looking at things like land use, like parking, all of those different, things that we need to work together to create a successful new prominently residential district. And so with that, there is a fair amount of existing parking today, a lot of that of which we think will be developed into new housing, hopefully, predominantly, new dense multifamily housing. That new housing will have, parking associated with it, parking garages. Developers can't get financing without it. And so there will be, parking created with the new development around there. We also are looking at doing things like adding on-street parking along some of these streets that are, currently like 4 or 5 lanes wide, and do not need that much capacity. So there will be some parking, more short-term parking for accessing the park for folks there.
Is there an intention at some time in the future or in the planning stage looking at actually connecting the 3 different, is there going to be some intentionality in making it a linear connected asset?
We won't take out the road. The roads will always be there and serve a transportation project. Yeah, so we are looking at some potential to, there might be potential to bridge over segments, like you mentioned. That's something we're looking at. We're also looking at, things to make those crossings safer and more, prioritizing, pedestrians than they are today. So that's very top of mind for us. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to have our cake and eat it too, both make it safe and connected for park users as well as, facilitate good access and connectivity downtown still.
You can see from the questions that we have had from our board, the interest that goes with this project. And we also understand that it's in the early stages of phase 1, and we certainly appreciate that update. And we're hoping that you will come back and give us an update at a later time to let us know the progress that has been made and answer probably many of the questions of our board as well as those that are listening in.
Absolutely.
So I want to say thank you so much for coming today and being with us, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy.
Please. our commissioner might like to say a few things.
That's okay. I was gonna say just thanks for the great partnership. Appreciate Stacy always being a great, catalyst and convener as well. And I'm just gonna suggest to the board and myself, we're not gonna take a picture with AJ today because, he'll use it against you later. So, no photos, please. Thank you.
We thank you. Just remember us in your mind. At this time, months back, we had visitors that came from us across this area and out up in the northern part of our country to come down, and I'm not sure that I'm going to get this right, Katrina, but were they My Teachers Educate or something of that nature? And they brought us at the time just an introduction as to the project of a partnership that we wanted to be a part of, Keep Georgia Safe. And we thought it was timely that we come back and bring information to you about what that partnership and the communication has meant to our state of Georgia and the introduction of that material that our team at GDOT has been working on. With that, Katrina, if you'll go forward.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell, and good morning, members of the board, Commissioner McMurray. I am honored to be standing before you today to provide a committee of the whole update on a partnership and a program that I am so passionate about and proud of. You first heard about this new educational program, and as Ms. Purcell just alluded to, and met members of the We Are Teachers team last summer. And now the program has a name and is already in schools across the state of Georgia. And I'm excited to share that with you. But before we dive in, I would like to introduce you all to Sam Harris, the Assistant State Traffic Engineer. And without him, this program may not have been, it may not have happened without he and his team and the access to the funding. So I want to bring Sam up and have him give a brief introduction, and then I will come back.
Proud to have you, Sam.
Thank you. So, safe system approach. So I've been up here, I've talked to you about the safe system approach. I've had staff come up here, they've talked to you about the safe system approach. Well, today we're going to talk about how we as GDOT have taken action on the safe system approach. And that's transportation and our roadway safety education. So not only does the strong partnership that Katina was just going over between traffic ops and communication display the safe system approach, but it also increases the coordination with teachers across our great state, showcasing this effort to a whole new level. So I'm going to quickly go through or highlight some of these principles that are a part of the safe system approach. You know, humans are vulnerable, humans make mistakes, especially our young drivers or inexperienced drivers in terms of making mistakes, and we got to be proactive when it comes to safety. And in going into the 5 elements, the one I want to highlight is the safe roadway users, because young drivers are among the users of the roadway. And being able to go out and do the proactive measures of safety education, K through 12, allows us to be able to get this information to kids, and from going from that K to 12 and getting the better understanding of what not to do on a roadway to be responsible, because driving is not a right, it's a privilege. And that all these elements are a way to be able to create redundancy within our system as we work together with all of our stakeholders. So if one doesn't potentially prevent a crash, maybe another one will, and another one will on top of that, which is particularly important with our goals of eliminating the fatalities and reducing our serious injuries on our roadways. So how does GDOT make this possible? With our Highway Safety Improvement Program that is out of traffic ops that I overview, with that infrastructure law that went in place a couple of years ago, you have 10% that can be spent each year on different things, including safety education. And we're taking full advantage of that through the efforts that we've done with the Safe Driving Summits and now with our new initiative that we're going to be getting into today. So why is this important? 27% increase of fatalities amongst our young drivers between 2019 to 2021. We have 8% of our total drivers in Georgia are young drivers, but they account for 10% of our fatalities, which is an overrepresentation. And being able to hone in on contributing factors such as speed, young drivers should not be out at night at 3 a.m. driving, talking about distraction in cars, with cell phones in particular, DUI, and in seatbelts. These are all core elements we want to get to young drivers to make sure they have a full understanding. So why do we think the safety education route is important, and is this an appropriate method? Well, I think when it comes to crashes on our roadways, especially with our young users, any and every means possible we should be looking at. There's research definitely to back this up, where they've actually done intervention, gotten in front of inexperienced drivers or young drivers, and they were able to show that with this type of information, it reduced the risky behavior, thus reducing the crashes that are involved. So I could take a poll in terms of how many of you recognize one of the campaigns that is shown on the screen. And mostly everybody, I would imagine, would raise their hand. And that further proves the point from the previous slide that education, especially a well-run campaign, can have a major impact on society. For instance, Smokey the Bear. 75% of adults recognize Smokey the Bear and view him as a role model for children. Click It or Ticket is another really big one. And NHTSA keeps up with the statistics on seatbelt use, but in 1994, seatbelt usage was around 58% on average in our country. Now the new numbers show well above 90%. So again, effective campaigns. And this is to show the strategic approach amongst the partnership with communication with several offices, including the Traffic Operations Office, on what we've built over time, and being able to prove that the safety education is a critical part of how we approach trying to reduce crashes on our roadway. So to talk about the newest venture that we have, I'm going to bring Katina back up, and we're going to talk about We Are Teachers.
Sam, thank you for that important information and context, providing a foundation to the importance of this program and others to highlight safety awareness and its importance for us as a department and to Georgians across the state. Furthermore, he spoke about safety strategies and research. He highlighted data and discussed the effectiveness of repetition. I will take it one step further and discuss relevance, timeliness, and audiences. We Are Teachers, who you met, some of them last summer, as again Ms. Purcell spoke about. They're a trusted and valued partner who have helped us develop a great program, and I hope that you agree. Before we move on, I cannot believe it has been nearly a decade since the Office of Strategic Communications launched the Drive Alert, Arrive Alive, and See and Be Seen campaigns. Those campaigns were born out of data and rising trends of fatality increases on our roadways. While those campaigns are alive and well, we realized early on that we were missing an opportunity. You see, those campaigns are raising awareness to those who already have positive and potentially negative habits ingrained in their everyday lives. We needed to go back to our roots and remember how we learned and what resonated with us when we were in school and being taught important safety messaging and core subjects. Sam discussed Smokey. Woodsy, don't get me started on litter, that's for another day, and several other campaigns that when you see the logo or mascot, you are immediately provided images of childhood and growing up with those characters. Well, now I would like to reintroduce you to some of the campaigns that, as a product of Generation X, have stuck with me and in many ways shaped who I am as a person today. Kids being educated. In my years, Gen X, the latchkey generation, we watched cartoons and we were a captive audience. And those campaigns on repeat helped us learn. When we weren't childhood forest rangers or on Team Captain Planet, we were learning all about grammar, science, economics, history, mathematics, passionate, and civics through catchy tunes and groovy cartoons on Saturday mornings. I felt sorry for that bill waiting to become a law. Little did I know that this would be true even now of some bills in my adulthood. I know all the conjunctions and their functions and how to skate a figure eight, although I've never wanted to. The importance of Schoolhouse Rock and its campaign to teach my same generation the fundamentals of classes that we might not have grasped from static chalkboards was revolutionary. You also see The More You Know and After School Specials. Those also were targeted to teenagers, aimed at raising awareness and sparking discussions among the viewers. We stand here today with fond memories of being taught important lessons that inform our understanding of the world today as adults. As we get into our teen years, ads like Father Like Son, also known as I Learned It by Watching You, launched in 1987 as part of an anti-narcotics campaign by the Partnership of Drug-Free America. Likewise, This Is Your Brain on Drugs, Any Questions? Also launched in 1987. This ad reached 92% of teens, and that's before social media. What safety campaigns realized is that we were learning by consuming content, and we were entering a time when we were making our own choices. The prospects of these things colliding, led to an anti-drinking and driving campaign produced by the US GDOT. The ads were originally designed to reach 16 to 24-year-olds who at the time accounted for 42% of all fatal alcohol-related car crashes, and to inspire personal responsibility to prevent drinking and driving. By 1986, a Roper poll found that 62% of young Americans reported they were now more conscious of the dangers of drunk driving than they had been before, and 34% refused to drink at all when planning to drive. Additionally, the US DOT reported a 25% decrease in the numbers of drunk drivers killed in traffic crashes between 1980 and 1990. The data proves advocacy and education campaigns worked, and in particular as it relates to impaired driving. Many of these ads are memorable to our generation, but they faded just like network TV has. But what hasn't faded is the need to establish good habits early on in life and continually reinforce those good habits over time so that our young people will practice them in adulthood. Borrowing from what worked with those campaigns, education while entertaining, it was realized the vehicle for our safety education curriculum program would once again be direct educational materials to Georgia public schools with a modern flair. Sure, the things we are taught might change or evolve, but the core subjects like math, science, reading, economics, etc. remain the same. What we needed to do and what we were challenged to do was figure out how safety messaging could be interwoven into those core subjects. Items delivered directly to the schools with the intent of measurable learnings that are quantifiable, and most importantly, resources that teachers will use. If you build it, they will come. Scholastic's weekly reader and their book fairs are reminders of the classroom and being in school. And who can forget Highlights magazine and the hidden pictures? It was and remains one of my favorites. I know I previously stated this, but I am so proud to be standing here with you today to introduce the bigger, better, and newly improved classroom student-focused education program called Keep Georgia Safe, a free K-12 car and road safety program from the Georgia Department of Transportation. The partnership between GDOT and We Are Teachers is one of a kind. We are still the only state Department of Transportation in the country providing a safety program this inclusive and this comprehensive into the schools. It was built by educators for educators, keeping Georgia and safety on our minds. As with a previous discussion point about the campaigns of Gen X and their varying messaging approaches, you will see glimpses of those strategies showcased in this program too. And while TV is no longer king like it once was, these materials are mobile-friendly, interactive, and gamified. I mentioned this program is built by teachers for teachers, but it's also built to Georgia Department of Education Standards of Excellence. Those standards are listed in a 42-page document showcasing how each piece of collateral is aligned. In anticipation of questions about the program, a helpful, frequently asked questions and answers list is also showcased for anyone wanting to utilize the materials and share what they liked about it. And you might be wondering just how many of these materials have been delivered. Delivery and promotion across Georgia began near the end of March. The number of kits delivered to teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5, over 16,000. The number of upper grade kits delivered to middle and high school, delivered directly to principals and assistant principals, nearly 1,000. The number of Georgia teachers who have actively participated and assisted in development of this program, nearly 20. Artists, designers, and video talent, 3 out of 5 are either Georgia natives or current residents of the state. Okay, so here we go. Everybody ready? So now you know the why, you know the who, you know the what, you know the where, you know the when. So now let me show you the examples of the how. Thomas Bussey, he is our video talent. He's a current 5th grade teacher in Georgia. And I could spend multiple minutes talking about how impressive and amazing he is, but I'd rather show you a video. It's a shorter version of what you'll find on the website, but let's take a look.
You do when you get in the car. I hope it's that you buckle up. I'm Thomas Bussey, a 5th grade teacher in Georgia. This video is made possible by the Georgia Department of Transportation. While buckling your seatbelt might seem like a small thing, it's massively important. There are so many statistics that prove why you should buckle up every time you get in a car. But here's the one that matters most. Buckling up is the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself in a crash. Of course, no one wants to be in a crash. But if you are, even a small one, your seatbelt is your best friend. Like peanut butter and jelly, socks and shoes, macaroni and cheese, seatbelts and car safety just go together. So let's show a little seatbelt love and learn a bit more about how they work. The good old seatbelt dates back to 1885. It was more of a harness system back then. They were created to keep tourists safe in taxis. The seatbelt we use today is based on the 3-point seatbelt system created in 1959. This 3-point design is like a Y shape. You have point 1 at the top of the strap, point 2 next to your hip, then point 3 across your hip where you insert the buckle. Inside this area, you have things like a spring, a ball, a rod, and a socket. Separately, these are all pretty basic mechanics, but together, they're like magic. So, if your car suddenly has to stop, they all do their part to keep you safe and secure. Hey, thanks to the Georgia Department of Transportation for making this video possible.
You all might recognize that sound. To me, it sounds like the ending of The More You Know. So it's just, again, fascinating to me. I mentioned the gamification and the interactivity of these resources. It's so important to engage students where they are and utilizing trusted materials that they already know. On the left, in the interactive games, you'll see a map of Georgia. There is a virtual field trip that students can go on. By far, just hearing the months that these items have been available, this is the best concept that the teachers and students are enjoying, which is so exciting for us as an internal team who have worked to develop this, because we were very intentional in the landmarks that we chose, and the journeys traveled, and the safety messaging that is highlighted. We wanted to ensure that every portion of the state was represented. On the right is the virtual road safety game. You just have to play it to get a true representation. And on the far right, Kahoot. We have 4 games thus far, and with another 4 in the works. With those, you play head-to-head with your friends, family, and classmates. They're timed quizzes, points-based, and you want to be number 1 at the end. So here's some gifts of the virtual field trip and of the driving game. Again, the virtual field trip allows the user to pick where they want to go. There is no specific beginning point. It is a choose your own adventure. There are puzzles, multiple choice quizzes, etc., with safety messaging throughout and fun facts about each destination visited around the state. The virtual online driving game, the key takeaway here is that distractions are real. And this game really highlights those distractions and just how dangerous they can be when you're behind the wheel. And if there's any video gamers out there, think of Bop It meets Guitar Hero meets Georgia and Safety Trivia Night to get the most points to customize your car. I mentioned materials being delivered directly to 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. These are activity and journal books. There's some actually at the back of the room if anyone wants to take one with you, just so you can kind of look and see what it feels like. Which, again, is just fascinating. Not fascinating. It's amazing, I should say, to look at these pieces of art, knowing that, again, they're created by folks who live in Georgia and have a sense of pride in what they're producing. Also, along with those activity books, posters were sent to teachers, middle school and high school as well. The posters are twofold. So on the front, it's artwork that teachers can hang in the room and to continue to have those messages showcased at all times. And then on the back side is the lesson plans and the worksheets for teachers and students to utilize as they're talking about these safety programs and learning about them. So in conclusion, and as you can see from the items just shared, there is a lot to look at and learn from. I cannot say enough great things about the thoughtfulness and the intention behind these resources. They will save lives and make a difference for those in Georgia. We will monitor and measure this program and make adjustments as needed. And who knows, perhaps there's a catchy jingle or a mascot in the future. Only time will tell. But I want to give a very quick thank you to the safety team and the communications team. This was truly a collaboration and is something that not only all Georgia DOT employees and anyone associated with Georgia DOT can be prideful about, but also we, our teachers and their teams, can celebrate too. And at this time, I'd like to provide us a little bit of time to Corey Stagner and Lisa Hershey, who are representatives of We Are Teachers, to come up and say a few words. And then, as always, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and happy to take any comments or questions.
Corey.
We were playing rock, paper, scissors, like who was going to come first.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hershey with We Are Teachers, and I just wanted to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to work on this. It's been a real pleasure. And I also want to say to Katina and Scott and Sam's team and everybody else that's been working on this, I know it's important to you guys, timing, and I can say that we finished this job early, which is unusual in transportation, I understand, from my brief learning about what you guys do. And the reason it happened so fast is, I think, because their passion for the project, and I've been doing this for about 30 years, and I can tell you that when our team is let to do their thing and matches with a group that's passionate, the outcome is this. And we have a lot, we work with, many other clients, U.S. Postal Service, and it doesn't always go that fast, and it's not always that creative. So this has been a really fun project. Now I'll introduce Corey.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for inviting us to be here to get to share our hand in this program. And I've been told I only have 30 seconds to speak to y'all, and I've worked with the Georgia Department of Transportation through Katina and Scott for I think about 7+ years now. So there's lots I could say to you, but I'm going to try to hold it to 2 things. The first thing I want to say is thank you, really, truly, and I'll get emotional about it, because it means so much to us. We work on lots of programs. This is a passion program, and it has been, I think, since the very start. So I want to say thank you to Katina for taking my first phone call. It took lots of calls for lots of government agencies to get to the right person. And we immediately bonded, I think, over understanding the power of what education can do for a generation, and I actually hope for generations of Georgians. So we're very, very excited about that. I want to say thank you to Scott, who has been a wonderful collaborator, always enthusiastic, always asking great questions, and helping to support the whole team as together we've collaborated on this. I want to thank everybody else in the team. There's lots of people that have worked on it, but Sam and Dave Adams and Sam Harris specifically, because they bring a really unique lens to what we do. And we take all of that feedback from statistics and what's happening in every single community, from an A county like Atlanta to a small D county like Brookletville, which is where my future son-in-law is from, and really making sure that we are bringing the whole youth across the state, together into this program and really inviting them into being part of the solution. So we thank Scott and Sam and Dave and the whole team for that, and certainly Commissioner McMurray, who's been a big champion. He has a personal connection to the power of education, and we really appreciate the opportunity. The second thing I will say is that, changing behavior takes time, and it takes champions. And you have wonderful champions in this room to help make that happen. We're going to be reaching virtually every kiddo in this state, kindergarten through 12th grade, and that's a lot of champions. So we have a lot of gratitude for being able to work with you on this. We're super excited to see what's going to come out of it, and we're open to any questions you might have.
At this time, do I have any comments other than my own? Then I will say, yes, Mr. Boswell.
I work with Katina on some of these lesson boards for you. She has done a fantastic job, and I just want to commend her for what she does.
Thank you, and that's a ditto also, Katina. Our whole department, we have always said that safety is a priority in everything we do, particularly here at GDOT. I want to thank all of our staff. Also, I want to say thank you to We Are Teachers for the communication, the partnership, to our commissioner. Thank you isn't enough, because when you reach young minds, that material stays with them, and from that, lives are saved. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. And if anyone else would like to make a comment, now is the time. Thank you so much.
I do have
yes,
one
Ms.
comment.
Williams?
I served for 16 years on our local school board. We were always looking for content that was relevant, that was age appropriate, and at the end of the day had impact. You've hit all 3 points. Thank you. And I wasn't going to mention that, like how long it takes too. So.
Anyway, it all works. Katina?
Thank you again for everyone's support and time and appreciation of this. It's fantastic. So thank you again.
Again, thank you. And at this time, if there's no other comments, one from our commissioner to maybe 2.
Maybe 2. One, thank you to Katina. Thank everybody. That's fabulous. And I always like to end on a high note, and that is certainly a high note. We have one more committee meeting planned, but Mr. Chairman, Ms. Vice Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, we would be more than willing to bring that back to you next month. It's the program delivery TIA update. Kenneth Franks has a wonderful presentation, but I don't know that he wants to follow that. And in view of time, we would be more than willing to do that at your pleasure, but we're willing to present as well. It's up to you.
Since
The
I
hour
guess
is
I've got
late,
the
the hour
committee
is
as a
late.
whole, I see our chairman is, saying that he certainly supports that. If there's no objection from any of our board members, I see none. So we will have this brought back to us at the next meeting at the request of our chairman.
I had some
So-
clever comments I was going to make related to that, but I understand.
Well, if you wish to, we'll certainly let you do that, Mr. Lewis. Well, if there's no other comments, then the committee of the whole stands adjourned. We will be back here a little before 1 o'clock for our board meeting. Thank you.